My wife let me raise another man's child for 18 years and is convinced she did nothing wrong. Posted by you, ThrowRA, Confession 47. Throwaway account because my family uses Reddit. I don't even know how to start this, so I'm just going to say it plainly. Last week, my wife of 21 years sat me down at our kitchen table and told me that our son, the boy I raised, protected, and loved for 18 years, is not biologically mine. She told me this the same way you tell someone you forgot to pick up milk. No build-up, no warning, no apology, just facts, delivered calmly, like she was finally checking something off a list. I'm 47 years old. My wife, Claire, is 45. Our son, Ethan, turned 18 2 months ago. We've been married since our late 20s. From the outside, we probably look like one of those couples people describe as solid. No dramatic fights. No public scandals. No obvious cracks. That illusion lasted right up until she destroyed it. She waited until Ethan turned 18. That's the part that keeps echoing in my head. Not when he was a baby. Not when he was a child. Not when he needed me the most. She waited until he was legally an adult. When I asked her why, she looked at me like I was stupid for even asking. Because it would have been disruptive before, she said. Disruptive. As if the truth was an inconvenience she'd politely postponed. Let me back up. Claire got pregnant 3 years into our marriage. I was thrilled. I cried when she told me. I called my parents immediately. I spent weeks reading books about fatherhood and acting like I understood half of what they said. She never hesitated, never acted nervous, never gave me a reason to question anything. I was there for every appointment. I held her hand during labor. I cut the cord. I signed a birth certificate without a second thought. Because why wouldn't I? I raised Ethan. I taught him how to ride a bike. I stayed up late helping him with school projects. I went to every parent-teacher conference, every game, every recital, every moment that mattered. When he was sick, I stayed up all night with him. When he was scared, he came to me. When he cried, I held him. I never once thought, he isn't mine. Not even for a second. Claire says she cheated once. Just once. She always emphasizes that part, like it's supposed to soften the blow. It was a mistake, she told me, and it meant nothing. She says it happened while I was on a work trip. She says she felt lonely. She says it didn't matter because she chose me in the end. That's her favorite line. I chose you. As if that somehow erases everything else. When I asked her if she knew the baby might not be mine, she didn't deny it. She shrugged. I suspected, she said. But you wanted a family so badly. I don't even know how to describe what that sentence did to me. She didn't say she was scared. She didn't say she was ashamed. She didn't say she was sorry. She said she was considerate. I asked her if she ever thought about telling me sooner. She laughed. Actually laughed. And blow everything up? For what? So you could leave? So Ethan could grow up without stability. She said it like she was protecting us. Like she was the hero of her own story. She told me she waited until Ethan turned 18 because at least now he's an adult and can handle it. I asked her if she'd told him. She said no. She said that was my responsibility. I don't know how I'm supposed to look at my son now. Not because I love him any less, I don't, but because every memory feels poisoned. Every milestone feels like it was built on something fake. And the worst part? Claire doesn't think she did anything wrong. She says biology doesn't matter. She says family is about love, not DNA. She says I'm overreacting. She told me I should be grateful she stayed. I haven't slept since she told me. I don't know how to talk to Ethan. I don't know how to stay married to someone who could lie this easily for nearly 2 decades. And I don't know how someone can destroy a life and still sit there, completely convinced they're the reasonable one. Edit. To everyone asking, yes, she is completely serious. No, she hasn't apologized. She says apologizing would imply she regrets it, and she doesn't. Edit 2. Please stop messaging me telling me to just move on. I'm trying to figure out how to breathe. Update. I try to confront her. I don't think she understands what she's done. I didn't plan to talk to Claire again so soon. I honestly thought I needed more time just to exist in the same space as her without completely falling apart. But it turns out that silence doesn't heal anything when the person who hurt you is perfectly comfortable pretending nothing happened. She was making coffee the next morning, humming, scrolling on her phone, acting like the night before, where she casually told me my entire life was a lie, had been a mildly uncomfortable conversation that was now over. That was the moment I realized I had to say something, because if I didn't, she was going to rewrite reality right in front of me. I asked her if we could talk. She didn't look up from her phone. About what? She asked. That question alone almost ended me. We sat at the same kitchen table where she'd dropped the truth on me days earlier. Same chairs, same lighting, same untouched mug ring from where I'd been sitting when my world collapsed. I told her I needed to understand how she could keep something like this from me for 18 years. She sighed, not angrily, not nervously, just tired, like I was exhausting her. I asked her the question I'd been rehearsing in my head over and over. Did you ever plan on telling me? She paused, long enough to feel intentional. Then she said, I don't see how that's helpful now. I told her that wasn't an answer. She shrugged and said, I told you now, didn't I? I asked why now. Why 18 years? Why not sooner? Why not when Ethan was a baby? Why not when he was old enough to understand? Why not when I still had some ability to make choices for my own life? She poured herself a glass of wine before answering. That should have told me everything. Because now it doesn't complicate anything, she said. I asked her what she meant by that. She explained, calmly, methodically, that telling me earlier could have caused problems. Custody issues, financial instability, emotional disruption. She said those words like she was giving a presentation at work. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a confession. This was a postmortem. I asked her if she'd ever considered that I might have wanted to decide whether I stayed. She looked genuinely confused. Why would you? She asked. I said, because it was my life. She shook her head and said, you're being dramatic. I told her she took my agency away, my right to consent to the life I was living, my right to decide whether I wanted to raise another man's child under false pretenses. She interrupted me. You loved being a father, she said. You were good at it, as if that settled the matter. I asked her if she ever felt guilty watching me pour everything I had into a lie. She leaned back in her chair and said, I don't think guilt is productive. I asked her if she ever lay awake at night worrying about what would happen if I found out. She said, I didn't see the point in borrowing trouble. I told her she'd stolen 18 years from me. She corrected me. I gave you 18 good years, she said. You don't get to rewrite that just because you're emotional right now. That's when I lost my temper. I told her she'd manipulated me, used me, built her stability on my ignorance. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't even look upset. She just said, you would have left. Not angrily, not accusingly, just factually. I asked her how she could be so sure. She said, because men always do. I asked her if she ever considered that I might have stayed. She said, that would have been a risk, and she wasn't willing to take it. I told her that what she did was cruel. She smiled slightly and said, cruel would have been letting Ethan grow up in a broken home. I asked her how lying to everyone for nearly 2 decades wasn't cruel. She said, everyone was happy. I told her Ethan deserved the truth. She said, he deserved stability. I told her I deserved honesty. She said, you got the outcome you wanted. At one point, I asked her something I didn't even realize I needed to know. Did you ever love me enough to tell me the truth? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, love isn't about confession. It's about results. That was when I realized this conversation was never going to end with her taking responsibility. In her mind, nothing had gone wrong. The only mistake, if she even considered it that, was that I found out. When I told her I didn't know how to stay married to her after this, she looked annoyed. Let's not make any rash decisions, she said. You're not thinking clearly. I asked her when I would be allowed to think clearly about my own life. She said, when you calm down. I went to the guest room that night. She slept in our bed. And for the first time since I married her, I understood something chilling. She didn't lie because she was afraid. She lied because she believed she was entitled to the outcome. Update. I told my son, I don't think I will ever forgive myself for how this happened. I waited 3 days before telling Ethan. Not because I thought there was a right time, but because every time I opened my mouth to say the words, my body physically refused. My chest tightened. My hands shook. I felt like I was about to confess to a crime I didn't commit but would still be punished for. Claire never asked when I planned to tell him. She never asked how I was going to tell him. She simply said, "You should probably handle that soon," like she was reminding me to schedule a dentist appointment. I asked her if she wanted to be there. She said no. "I don't see why I should have to sit through that," she told me. "This is already hard enough without being made into the villain." That sentence will stay with me forever. I asked her if she thought Ethan deserved to hear it from both of us. She said, "He'll just get emotional. That won't help anything." So I was left to carry it alone. I asked Ethan to sit down with me after dinner. He looked confused but didn't question it. He's always trusted me. That makes this worse. We sat in the living room, the same couch where we'd watched movies together, the same space where I'd helped him fill out college applications, the same room where he'd fallen asleep leaning against my shoulder when he was younger. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times he'd call me Dad. I started by telling him I loved him. That immediately made his face change. He asked what's wrong. I told him there was something important I needed to tell him, something difficult. He joked and said, "I didn't get someone pregnant, I swear." I almost broke right there. I told him that what I was about to say didn't change how I felt about him. I told him I would always be his father, no matter what. He frowned and said, "Okay." I realized then that no amount of reassurance could prepare someone for this. I told him the truth. Not all at once. Not cleanly. Not bravely. The words came out broken and uneven. That his mom had cheated. That it happened before he was born. That there was a chance, no, a certainty, that I wasn't his biological father. He laughed. A short, confused sound. He said, "You're messing with me." Well, I didn't laugh back. His smile disappeared. He asked, "Is this real?" I nodded. He stared at the floor for a long time. Too long. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. "So, you knew." And when I told him I'd only just found out, his face crumpled. Not into anger, into devastation. He asked if his mom knew. I told him yes. He asked how long. I hesitated. I shouldn't have, but I did. When I finally said, "Since the beginning," he stood up so fast he knocked the chair backward. 18 years, he said. His voice cracked on the number. I nodded again. He started pacing. He asked if everyone knew. I said no. He asked if anyone else suspected. I said no. He asked if his grandparents knew. I said no. Every answer made his breathing faster. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Who's my real dad?" I didn't have an answer, because Claire never cared enough to find out. When I told him that, he stopped pacing. He just stood there, frozen. "She didn't even check?" he asked. I shook my head. He whispered, "Wow." Not angry. Not loud. Just hollow. He asked why she would do that. I didn't know how to answer without destroying his relationship with her completely. But the truth was already doing that. So I said, "She thought it was best." He laughed again, this time bitter. "For who?" That's when he started crying. Not loud sobbing. Just silent tears running down his face while he tried to wipe them away like he was embarrassed to be seen breaking. I've never felt more helpless in my life. He asked if she was sorry. I didn't answer right away. That hesitation told him everything. He asked if she planned to tell him herself. I said no. He asked why. I said, "She said you'd get emotional." He let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. He asked if I still wanted to be his dad. That question nearly destroyed me. I told him yes. Immediately. Without hesitation. I told him nothing could change that. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. He stood up and grabbed his jacket. I asked him where he was going. He said he needed air. I asked him to come back soon. He didn't answer. Claire didn't move when he left. Didn't ask where he was going. Didn't call after him. Didn't look concerned. She just said, "Well, that could have gone worse." Hours passed. Then a text. "Staying at Jake's tonight." That was it. I told Claire he wasn't coming home. She shrugged. "He'll calm down," she said. "Teenagers are dramatic." I asked her if she planned to reach out to him. She said, "I don't want to overwhelm him." That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the door, thinking about how many nights I'd waited up for him when he was younger, thinking about how safe he used to feel here, thinking about how one truth, delayed for 18 years, had shattered everything in a single evening. I don't regret telling him, but I hate that I had to. I hate that she made it my responsibility, and I hate that she still insists this is somehow not her fault. Update. She finally explained herself. I don't think she experiences reality the same way the rest of us do. I thought I'd already heard the worst of it. I was wrong. Claire decided she wanted to set the record straight after Ethan stopped responding to her messages entirely. Not to apologize, not to check on him, but to explain why everyone else was reacting incorrectly. She said people were misinterpreting her intentions. That was her phrase. She asked me to sit down with her in the living room. Not at the kitchen table this time. The couch. Neutral ground, she said. Like this was mediation, not the aftermath of a moral collapse. She told me she wanted to speak without interruption. I agreed. I regret that. She started by saying she felt attacked. By me. By Ethan. By the situation. She said she never imagined honesty would turn her into the villain. That word again. Villain. As if this was a story she was being unfairly cast in, not one she authored. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. She said she realized that the real issue wasn't the lie. It was how people reacted to it. That should have been my cue to leave the room. She told me society is obsessed with punishment. That people don't actually care about truth, they care about control. She said what she did was contextual and that anyone judging her lacked nuance. I asked her what the context was. She said, I made the best decision with the information I had. I asked her what information justified lying to me for 18 years. She said, I knew you. She said I'm a rigid person. Predictable. Rule-oriented. Emotionally conservative. She said if she'd told me the truth back then, I would have reacted badly. I asked her what badly meant. She said, you would have centered yourself. She said I would have turned her mistake into my trauma. I didn't know how to respond to that. She saw my silence and took it as agreement. She said men are taught that betrayal against them is the ultimate sin, while women are expected to absorb damage quietly. She said she refused to live like that. She said she chose herself. I asked her if she understood that what she did stripped me of informed consent. She frowned. I don't like that word, she said. It's loaded. She said marriage isn't a contract, it's an ecosystem. She said ecosystems require balance. She said sometimes that means withholding destabilizing information. I asked her if she ever worried about what would happen if Ethan found out. She said she assumed he'd be grateful. For what? I asked. For being raised well, she said. For having a father who showed up. I told her that father was me. She said exactly. She said biology is a distraction people use to avoid dealing with emotional reality. She said Ethan is only upset because I primed him to be. She said if I'd framed it differently, he would have adapted. She said children mirror the emotional tone of the parent who tells them things. So, according to her, his devastation was my fault. I asked her if she planned to tell Ethan that she'd known the whole time. She said she hadn't decided yet. She said timing matters. She said disclosure should be strategic. That word again. Strategic. She said Ethan is in a fragile developmental stage. She said too much honesty too quickly could fracture his sense of identity. I asked her what she thought 18 years of deception did. She said it gave him one. I told her she was rewriting reality to absolve herself. She smiled. Everyone rewrites reality, she said. The difference is whether they admit it. I asked her a question I didn't plan to ask. If you had it to do over again, knowing everything you know now, would you still lie? She didn't hesitate. Yes. She said the outcome justified the method. She said everyone had benefited until I destabilized things. She said the only real harm occurred when the truth was introduced. She said that made the truth the problem. I asked her if she felt any empathy for what Ethan was going through. She said empathy doesn't mean self-flagellation. She said emotions pass. She said narratives stick. She said she refused to let herself be defined by a single decision. I reminded her that decision spanned 18 years. She said duration doesn't change intent. She told me something that genuinely frightened me. She said if she'd told me earlier and I'd left, that would have been my choice and therefore my fault. But because she didn't give me the choice, she protected everyone from that outcome, including herself. I asked her if she understood that this way of thinking was dangerous. She asked me, dangerous to whom? She said she's tired of being expected to suffer to make other people feel morally comfortable. She said accountability is just another form of social control. She said she will not apologize for surviving. When I told her I was considering divorce, she went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You'd really throw everything away over biology?" I told her it wasn't biology. It was the lie. She shook her head. "No," she said calmly. "It's pride." She told me I needed to be careful. She said if I left, I'd be proving her right. That I only valued the idea of fatherhood, not the reality. She said Ethan would eventually see that. That was when I realized something deeply unsettling. She doesn't see herself as someone who did harm. She sees herself as someone who outsmarted consequences. And she believes anyone who suffers because of it is simply failing to adapt. I don't know how to reason with someone who believes morality is flexible, truth is optional, and damage only counts if she feels it. I don't know how to co-parent or even coexist with someone who sees empathy as a weakness and accountability as oppression. And for the first time since this began, I'm afraid, not of losing my marriage, but of how long I live beside someone who thinks like this and never let me see it. Final update. I don't think she ever saw us as people, only outcomes. I didn't realize I was unraveling at first. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single breakdown moment, just a steady erosion of certainty about myself, my memories, my role in my own family. Claire moved through the house like nothing had changed. She slept normally. She ate normally. She went to work, came home, watched TV, laughed at her phone. Meanwhile, I started questioning everything. Not just what happened, but whether I was allowed to feel the way I did about it. That was the most dangerous part. She began reframing things constantly. If I was quiet, she said I was being passive-aggressive. If I spoke up, she said I was being hostile. If I tried to explain my feelings, she said I was spiraling. She told me I was losing perspective. She told me trauma can distort memory. She told me I was rewriting the past to justify abandoning my family. I started keeping notes. Not because I wanted proof for a lawyer, but because I was scared I was starting to forget what was real. She'd say things and later deny ever saying them. Or she'd say them again, slightly altered, smoother, more reasonable. And somehow, I was always the unstable variable in her version. Ethan still hadn't come home. He spoke to me occasionally. Short texts. Neutral tone. Claire, however, began messaging him constantly. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Just carefully. I only found out because Ethan showed me. He came by one afternoon while Claire was out. He looked exhausted. Older. Like something had been drained out of him. He handed me his phone and said, "I think she's trying to mess with my head." Her messages were calm, thoughtful, devastating. She told him she never meant to hurt anyone. She told him adults make complex decisions children can't understand. She told him emotions can distort truth. Then she pivoted. She told him I was struggling. She said I was having a hard time separating biology from love. She said grief can turn into resentment if left unchecked. She said sometimes people project pain onto the safest target. She never outright blamed me. That was the brilliance of it. She just suggested. She told him I was rethinking everything. She told him I might distance myself. She told him I was questioning whether I could stay his father in the way he deserved. That was a lie, a calculated one. She ended one message with, "I just don't want you to get hurt if he decides this is too much for him." I had to sit down after reading that, because I finally understood. She wasn't reacting anymore. She was controlling the narrative. I confronted her that night. Not angry, not shouting, just finished. I asked her why she was telling Ethan I might abandon him. She said she was preparing him emotionally. I asked her why she told him I was unstable. She said she was contextualizing my behavior. I told her to stop. She smiled, small, tight, irritated. "You don't get to police my relationship with my son," she said. I reminded her that I was still his father. She corrected me. "You're a father figure," she said. "Let's not confuse roles." Something in me cracked then. Not loudly. Just quietly gave up. I told her she was harming him. She said, "He's already harmed." I told her she was manipulating him. She said, "I'm protecting him from disappointment." Then she said the thing that ended everything. She said, "If he has to choose between us eventually, I'd rather he understands why." I asked her if she was trying to turn him against me. She didn't answer directly. She said, I'm making sure he doesn't idealize you. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there, realizing that for 18 years, I hadn't been her partner. I'd been a stabilizing asset. I filed for divorce the next morning. She wasn't surprised. She was annoyed. She said this was impulsive. She said I was proving her concerns. She said I was choosing my ego over my family. When I told Ethan I was leaving the house, he went very quiet. Then he said, "She told me you might." I asked him what he thought. He said, "I don't know what to think anymore." That hurt more than anything else. But then, slowly, something shifted. Time passed. Claire kept pushing, kept reframing, kept subtly undermining. And Ethan started noticing. He told me she never asked how he felt, only how he was reacting. He told me she corrected his emotions. He told me she said pain was a phase. He told me she once said, "Your dad is making this harder than it needs to be." One night, he called me. He said, "She talks like feelings are problems to be solved." Then he said, "You never did that." That was the first time I felt like I could breathe again. I moved out. The house felt lighter immediately. I still miss the life I thought I had. But I don't miss the confusion. Claire tells people I abandoned her. She tells people I couldn't handle the truth. She tells people she was honest when it mattered. She still believes that. Ethan lives with uncertainty now, but at least it's real. He sees her differently, not cruelly, just clearly. As for me, I'm learning something terrifying and freeing at the same time. Love without honesty isn't love. It's management, and I was managed for 18 years. This is the end of my story here. If you're reading this and something about it feels familiar, trust that feeling. Confusion isn't a failure of understanding. Sometimes it's the result of someone else refusing to see you as fully human. Final edit. I won't be updating again. I'm choosing peace, even if it comes late. Thank you to everyone who helped me remember what reality feels like.